comes from outer space, blows in with the wind, rides in with the waves, and rises from the molten core of the Earth, just in time to save a planet in crisis. Earth, air, fire, water, and imagination. Limitless resources whose time has come. Now, renewable energy on Modern Marvels. The action never stops at the FedEx Regional Sort Facility. Located at Oakland International Airport in California, it's the shipping giant's hub for the Pacific region. 1,700 workers and a state-of-the-art conveyor system sort about 85 million packages per year.
There's more than 250,000 packages that transit this facility in a given day. And we, in a month, are using approximately 450 to 500,000 kilowatt hours of power.
To meet these electricity demands, FedEx decided to build its own power plant. It's silent, has no moving parts, and it's located conveniently on the roof. Taking advantage of abundant sunshine and 81,000 square feet of unused roof space, FedEx hired Sharp Solar to design this photovoltaic electricity system in 2005. Today, it supplies 80% of the facility's peak electricity needs.
We're looking at a system here that's 904 kilowatts, a very large system. It might be the largest system, rooftop system on a commercial building in the state of California. And it's composed of about 5,700 solar modules, and that large array uses about 300,000 silicon cells.
When sunlight strikes each of the silicon cells, it excites electrons, which are knocked free to form an electric current. Metal contact points carry the current away and complete the circuit. Typically, 40 solar cells make up a module. Several modules are combined into an array.
The power off of these arrays are ganged up, put together, and sent down through an inverter. That inverter changes DC power to AC power.
And that's it. In a split second, sunlight is converted into electricity, enough to power the beehive of activity below.
It can power a light bulb on a desk, or it could power the whole sort system.
One of the large benefits of solar power for commercial applications is that the system typically produces its maximum amount of power when utility prices are the highest, which is the middle of the day. When this system is putting out more power than the building is using, the power goes back into the grid and actually turns the meter backwards.
And the system is pretty much maintenance-free. So we're very pleased with that, and it's just another way that FedEx can lower our environmental footprint and still give great service to our customers.
What kind of environmental benefit can one rooftop bring? Over its 25-year guaranteed life, this one will offset 10,800 tons of carbon dioxide. That's the equivalent of removing 2,100 cars from the road. In an economy burdened by the costs of increasingly scarce oil and natural gas, and a planet already feeling the impact of fossil fuel-driven climate change, the technological revolution of our time is renewable energy.
And say welcome to the 21st century. Things are going to be different. Energy, sustainable energy is something that our kids care about and the mainstream public cares about, and renewables has to be part of the solution.
Sunlight, wind, water, geothermal heat, and plant biomass are all essentially limitless resources. And they're all proven technologies that work right here, right now. The sun provides the Earth with unfathomable amounts of energy. In 1 hour, the Earth receives more energy from the sun than the entire human race uses in a year. With current technology, photovoltaic panels covering 10,000 square miles, or about 10% of the land area of Nevada, could provide all of the electricity used by the United States. Although photovoltaics, converting the sun's light to electricity, was not discovered until the 20th century, solar thermal, harnessing the sun's heat, is an ancient practice. Perhaps the earliest use of solar thermal technology was the south-facing home. Ancient cultures, including the Anasazi Indians of the American Southwest, designed their buildings to face south to maximize heat from the sun, which stays low in the southern sky during winter. In the summer, when the sun is high in the sky, the cliff face that extended over the building provided cooling shade. It's still a common design today.
The Greeks built entire cities laying out the streets so every house could take advantage of sunlight during winter but avoid it during summer. Now the Romans went one step further and they discovered that clear glass will trap solar heat. So they covered the windows with glass. They became what the Romans called heliocamini, which mean solar furnaces.
2 millennia later, the 19th century equivalent of this technology was born. The rooftop solar water heater, which traps the sun's rays in a glass collector and rapidly heats up water inside insulated glass pipes. At the turn of the 20th century, 30% of the homes in Pasadena, California, used solar water heaters. The same concept is used today to cheaply provide hot water to millions, even in cold, cloudy climates.
For almost every homeowner, heating water is the #1 use of natural gas electricity. And using the sun to heat is much cheaper.
Solar thermal energy can also cheaply produce electricity. Giant solar power plants, like this one in California's Mojave Desert, don't use photovoltaic panels to convert light into electricity. Instead, mirrors focus solar rays onto a thin absorber tube that runs along the mirror's focal point. Inside the tube is synthetic oil, which is blasted with intense heat.
Like about 1,000 degrees centigrade. One word of advice, never put your hand at the focus of a concentrating mirror, because it will just make an immediate hole through your flesh.
The superheated oil boils water into steam, which turns turbines. The oil then recirculates through the closed-loop system. In hot, dry areas, solar thermal plants generate serious megawatts at a price lower than typical grid power. In fact, solar thermal plants occupying that same 10% section of Nevada could also supply all of the United States' electrical needs. Meanwhile, photovoltaic technology is surging ahead into its second century. It's come a long way since 1904, when Albert Einstein first proved that light was composed of tiny packets of energy known as photons, which could be converted to electricity. Photovoltaic cells got their first big break in the 1950s, thanks to the space race.
The first 2 Sputniks that went up, they had all this like multi-million dollars worth of transistors that went dead in about a week and a half because they were running them on flashlight batteries.
The first artificial Earth satellite in the world has now been created.
The U.S. space program's solar-powered satellites, on the other hand, proved an instant success. Photovoltaic panels still power nearly all satellites and space probes within the solar system. In this sense, the 21st century lifestyle, from global positioning to global communication, is completely dependent on solar energy. The U.S. Coast Guard became one of the first Earth-based users of photovoltaics, powering its remote buoys and weather stations with solar panels, wired to batteries. In the 1970s and 80s, solar panels performed heroically during one of the worst droughts to hit Africa. Solar power was used to pump water, from 40 feet below the parched ground, saving many lives.
In fact, probably one of the most valuable uses of photovoltaics today is to provide clean drinking water for the developing world.
For those already connected to the power grid, photovoltaics are becoming more and more viable.
A home, say a 2-bedroom suburban American home, gets enough energy on its roof to power itself once or twice over.
And it doesn't actually need to be as sunny as you think for solar to work. The most successful solar program in the world is actually in Germany, and they have less sun in Germany than they do in Seattle.
For the time being, photovoltaic panels are still expensive, making solar electricity 2 to 5 times the cost of typical grid power. But grid-connected homeowners can sell excess peak hour electricity back to the power company at a premium.
The systems do pay for themselves. The payback might be as short as 4 or 5 years, and in general, for residential systems, we're looking at 10 to 12 years. That doesn't take into account some of the other benefits, like, for example, the protection from rising utility rates or also increased property value.
Up until now, the primary cost of solar cells has been the ultra-pure silicon needed for the photovoltaic reaction. But more than one company wants to change that.
The photovoltaics industry is based primarily on wafers of silicon to make high-efficiency solar cells. But those wafers themselves are very expensive. Nanosolar uses thin films of photoactive material instead of those expensive wafers.
Rather than silicon, Nanosolar in Palo Alto, California, uses a combination of semiconducting elements.
So you have copper, indium, gallium, sulfo, selenide. Because that's obviously a mouthful, we get more work done if we just say CIGS, C-I-G-S-S. The beauty of the material absorbs sunlight very readily, so you can make a very thin layer.
So thin that the absorbing material is assembled on the nanoscale, then literally printed onto a foil substrate as a photovoltaic ink.
On this experimental machine, the foil is moving very slowly, but this style of machine can be made to run at tens or even hundreds of meters per minute. And because of this, these relatively inexpensive machines can be used to make an enormous quantity of low-cost photovoltaic cells.
Thin film solar panels, as well as their silicon counterparts, can be built right into a building surface, such as a roof, window glass, or in the near future, paint. So-called building integrated photovoltaics will drive down the cost of solar electricity even further.
Because you're not buying panels and the infrastructure, you're buying it all at once. And my lab has been looking at forecasts of getting 20%, 25% of total energy from solar by making it this ubiquitous material that you just get everywhere.
The sun's heat also gives rise to the invisible, powerful force known as the wind. And in the future of energy, wind is a force to be reckoned with. Solar water heaters are mandatory for all residences in Israel. Other governments are considering similar requirements. Renewable energy will return on Modern Marvels. We now return to renewable energy on Modern Marvels. Tucked among the rolling hills of central New York is the Fenner Wind Project, owned by Enel North America. Though not the world's biggest wind power project, it represents the new thinking in wind energy. Bigger, smarter, and fewer wind turbines, eliminating the need for dozens of smaller turbines. Fenner is composed of 20 wind turbines built and maintained by GE Energy. Each stands 215 feet tall, has a rotor 218 feet in diameter, a bit longer than the wingspan of a 747, and produces 1.5 megawatts of electricity.
When you look at the average New York household, this wind power project can actually power about 14,000 homes over the course of a year.
Converting wind to electricity begins as the wind flows over the rotor's airfoil-shaped blades. The combination of lift and drag causes the blades to rotate.
There's a tremendous amount of kinetic energy in the wind, and similar to sailing or lifting an aircraft off the ground, the wind blade captures that kinetic energy and provides lift. And that lift, like a propeller, is converted into torque.
That tremendous torque is put to work inside the turbine's power plant, 200 feet above the ground.
The blades collect the energy from the wind and convert that energy from wind energy to mechanical energy, transmits it through the main shaft into the gearbox, which the gearbox steps it up from about 1 revolution to 70 revolutions and puts it on the output shaft of the gearbox, going into the generator here, which then produces power. The generator operates between about 850 to 1400 RPMs.
From the generator, the electric current travels down the tower to underground transmission lines and into the power grid. The main challenge for wind power is the fact that the wind is not blowing at all sites, at all times. The solution is to diversify the locations of wind turbines and guide the turbines to the wind. Computer controls can turn the entire turbine up to 360 degrees to catch the prevailing wind. These controls also direct individual blades to pitch into optimum wind position.
Each axis can operate independently of each other. All the blades pitch to the same degree that they're told to pitch to and maintain that. Each turbine will come online on its own. It doesn't need any human interface to do it.
Technicians are needed to perform maintenance on the turbine and to change a light bulb on occasion. Those with a fear of heights need not apply.
I have the benefit of having probably the best office window in Madison County. I mean, if you look out the top, it's absolutely gorgeous up here.
Clusters of wind turbines are often called a wind farm. And in the case of Fenner, New York, it really is a farm. The land is owned by local farmers like Donna Griffin. For landowners, going green is a good way to make some green.
We have a lease with them where they pay on the production of each turbine. It's just another crop that we harvest. It's much easier than harvesting our other crops. The wind is free. As long as the turbine is turning, we know we're going to get paid.
From New York to North Dakota, American farmlands and badlands are turning into wind-swept power plants.
The United States has some of the best wind resources in the world. Just to calibrate you, North and South Dakota theoretically have enough wind to power the whole country. The challenge is tapping that and transmission and distribution, but if you look at the center of the country, the wind resources are tremendous. If you look at the coastlines, the wind resources are tremendous.
Farming and wind power have a long history together. In fact, it was on the farm that wind power saw most of its advances. The famous Dutch tower mills, introduced about 1390, saw many innovations over the centuries, including leading-edge airfoil sections on its light wooden blades, which dramatically improved the art of aerodynamic lift. These pre-industrial dynamos were mainly used for drainage and grinding grain into flour. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, small windmills on American farms were the first to employ a large number of light, efficient steel blades, which produced significant torque, even in low winds. Some of these machines were also the first to convert wind to electricity.
In the last century, we had a lot of wind power installed in the California West to power water pumps for agriculture and for cattle. And so we actually started a lot of this country with alternative energy. It was mainstream then, but they dropped off the radar screen as the prices of oil and fossil fuel became so inexpensive.
The new era of wind technology began in the early 1980s, when Zon's Systems began putting 50-kilowatt wind turbines, tiny by today's standards, in the hills of Tehachapi, California.
During the 1980s, we went from 50, 60 kilowatts to a couple hundred kilowatts by the end of the decade. During the 1990s, it was 550 kilowatts, and then we went to 750, and then by the end of the decade, we were at 1.5 megawatts.
The company also implemented variable speed turbines, which allowed the rotors to accelerate and generate additional energy during a violent gust of wind. Advances such as these, along with smarter computer controls and lighter, cheaper, and more aerodynamic rotor designs, have made the cost of wind-powered electricity competitive with that of natural gas and even coal. Wind power is experiencing exponential growth. Several European nations will soon be getting 20% or more of their electricity through wind. In June of 2006, the U.S. Department of Energy announced it would also aim for a target of 20%. Right now, the figure stands at less than 1%. As engineers continue to make wind turbines more resilient and cost-efficient, you can expect them to get even bigger. As always, the bigger the rotor, the more energy that can be captured. Some of the biggest turbines are reaping the massive wind harvest on the oceans.
There are ideas on the board for bigger turbines in excess of 5 megawatts, 6 megawatts to go offshore, out in the ocean. We see many technical opportunities to continue to push wind technology even beyond where we've pushed it today.
We are making progress. We are the future. We are reducing our dependence upon oil, and we're trying to save the environment at the same time. It's a plus.
This is a viable technology. It's economic. It's proven. You know, what more do we need to know?
Wind is certainly a hot technology. But so is this. Geothermal energy. Hot enough to power a small nation. China, second to the U.S. in total wind potential, plans to produce 30 gigawatts of wind power by 2020, enough to power between 13 and 30 million Chinese households. Renewable energy will return on Modern Marvels. We now return to renewable energy on Modern Marvels. A small island nation, ringed with volcanoes and perched just below the Arctic Circle, has emerged as a world leader in renewable energy. By tapping into their bounty of fire and water, the people of Iceland have become nearly energy independent. Abundant rainfall and glacial runoff provide hydroelectric power, which represents 80% of the nation's electricity. This water also seeps into underground aquifers and runs head-on into magma-heated rock, which sits close to the surface in Iceland. This collision results in geysers, fumaroles, smoky vents, and the renewable source known as geothermal energy. Icelanders have used geothermal hot water for washing clothes and bathing for hundreds of years. But it wasn't until the mid-20th century that engineers began tapping the resource on a scale large enough to replace costly imported fossil fuels.
To us here in Iceland, it's native, it's indigenous source. It is much cheaper than other sources which we have, and it's environmental friendly. So I think there's a lot of benefits.
Geothermal water brings heating and hot water to 93% of the nation's homes. Geothermal steam generates 17% of Iceland's electricity. All told, geothermal provides over 50% of Iceland's total energy needs. The Nesjavellir power plant is a dual-use facility. It taps geothermal energy to provide electricity as well as hot water. Both end products begin here in one of 15 boreholes drilled as far as 6,000 feet below the surface. The borehole's well is encased in cement to a depth of about 2,000 feet. Below that, the well is lined with perforated metal to let in steam and hot water, which rush toward the surface under great pressure.
A borehole discharges by itself. You don't need to pump it. When you put a very powerful set of valves on the top to control it.
The mixture of steam and hot water is sent to the separation module. From here, the water and steam take separate paths. The steam heads for the demister to remove moisture that could damage the turbines. Excess water vapor is vented into the air, along with trace amounts of other greenhouse gases. Over a year, this power plant will release 12,000 tons of greenhouse gases, what a coal-fired plant releases in 5 days.
Geothermal power plant for electricity works exactly like you're using coal or oil in terms of turbine, except this is a natural steam. For electricity production, you're using actually the pressure of steam, not the heat itself.
The steam turns one of 4 turbines at a rate of 3,000 RPM. The turbines combine to generate 120 megawatts of electricity, which is sent on to Reykjavik. Nesjavellir is a high-temperature geothermal zone, meaning the water below the surface is hot enough to dissolve sulfur and other corrosive minerals. For this reason, it can't be used directly in the population's heating system. Instead, the power plant uses the geothermal water to heat cold, fresh water pumped in from a nearby aquifer. In the first stage of heating the water, excess steam from the electricity-producing turbines is used to bring the cold water up to 125 degrees.
125 Fahrenheit is not hot enough for us, so we have to heat the water a little bit more, up to 86 degrees centigrade. It's about 187 Fahrenheit. And we do that in heat exchanger.
Inside the heat exchanger, the geothermal brine rapidly brings the fresh water to its 187-degree target temperature. The now scalding fresh water is pumped into the pipeline as it climbs uphill.
And from there, the water flows after the pipeline by gravity to Reykjavik. And the heat loss on the way is less than 2 degrees centigrade, it's 1.8. So you could say that the pipeline is, well, the insulation is almost perfect.
After providing hot water and space heating, this geothermal lifeline has enough heat left over to melt snow from the winter sidewalks as it passes under the streets. It also allows hundreds of greenhouses to grow fresh fruits and vegetables. Even the geothermal brine finds other uses. Unique in the world of power plants, the effluent from one Icelandic geothermal plant actually provides the warm, mineral-rich waters of the Blue Lagoon, a hugely popular spa. The Icelandic government has set an ambitious long-term goal: convert all the nation's cars, and even its fishing fleet, to run on clean-burning hydrogen, produced by geothermal and hydropower. If that day comes, all of Iceland's energy needs will be met with renewables. Iceland is far from the only place on Earth with rich geothermal resources. Generally, where there's volcanic activity, there's geothermal energy. One study estimates that 865 million people in volcanic regions from Japan to Idaho could get their electricity through geothermal. That's 17% of the world's population. But there's another form of geothermal energy, less exotic, yet very effective, that any homeowner can tap into. It's known as ground source geothermal. Nearly everywhere on Earth, about 8 feet below the surface, the air is a steady, cool temperature, between 50 and 75 degrees. To capture that air, a trench is dug below the building and tubing laid in. An antifreeze liquid, circulated by a small electric pump, passes through the tubes. In the summer, the liquid carries heat out of the building and mild temperatures in. In the winter, the warmer ground air heats the liquid, which flows into the colder building. It's in effect an underground heat exchanger. As the prices of heating oil and natural gas continue to go up, more people will start to look down. And like all renewable energy sources, geothermal will be there, waiting. Renewable technology clearly has what it takes to power the grid and heat our homes. But what will it have to say about the future of the automobile? From ethanol crops to electric cars, it's a heated debate. The first plant to generate electricity using geothermal energy is in Tuscany. It began producing electricity in 1904, and today provides power for about 1 million Italian households. Renewable energy will return on Modern Marvels. We now return to renewable energy on Modern Marvels. At first glance, it's a typical auto repair shop. But Lovecraft Biofuels in Los Angeles is hardly typical. Give them 3 hours and a few $100s, and they'll convert your diesel car to run on 100% all-American vegetable oil.
And they're also capable of running on biodiesel, mineral oil, kerosene, transmission fluid, motor oil. Not that you'd want to run on all of those, but they're capable after the conversion.
Petroleum, which accounts for 30% of the world's energy use, is growing scarcer every day. So it's not surprising to see customers lining up to switch to another kind of oil, one that's renewable. For many diesels, the conversion process simply requires adding a special high-flow filter and a heat exchanger, which uses coolant heated by the engine to raise the vegetable oil to the right temperature.
And if you get that balance right, the engine runs great. It even can run better than on diesel.
The best fuel is actually used vegetable oil, since the frying process has cooked out any embedded water.
So if you work a deal with the restaurant, pick it up for free, you're saving them a fortune and you're saving yourself a fortune.
That's because the restaurant avoids its usual oil disposal fee, and the driver gets free fuel. Of course, new vegetable oil works just about as well.
Cottonseed seems to run the best, but soybean is the easiest to find. It runs great and it's the cheapest. So we're really advocates of soybean oil. It can bail out farmers. It keeps the money in the U.S. economy, and there's already an infrastructure in place.
While the idea of running a car on cooking oil may hold a certain comic appeal, vegetable oil fuel is part of the solution to a deadly serious problem. Nearly 20% of the world's global warming greenhouse gases come directly from automobiles. In addition to being renewable, biofuels from vegetable oil to biodiesel to ethanol have at least 2 environmental benefits over gasoline. They release fewer and less toxic emissions. And more importantly, their carbon emissions can potentially be offset by the carbon taken out of the atmosphere when the biofuel was a plant. Biodiesel, which is made from a plant's fatty oils, and ethanol, an alcohol fuel distilled from a plant's sugars, are the hot biofuels of the moment. But they're also straight out of early automotive history. Rudolf Diesel built his engine to run on peanut oil. Henry Ford designed the Model T to run on ethanol.
Since then, the onset of petroleum and gasoline came into play, and it was a lot cheaper to do than ethanol. We weren't nearly as efficient producing it.
Each new discovery of cheap domestic oil pushed these early biofuels to the margins.
And now we're doing almost a full circle turn back to go to what we were utilizing in the first place.
In the U.S., the most talked about ethanol feedstock is corn grain. But corn grain ethanol yields only slightly more energy than the amount of fossil fuels needed to harvest and distill it.
For every unit of petroleum that you put into the production process, you get 1.3 units of fuel ethanol energy out. So it's slightly positive, but it's not as good as it could be.
By contrast, the sugarcane ethanol used in Brazil yields 8 units of energy for every unit of fossil energy put in. Not only is the feedstock bursting with fermentable sugars, but the rest of the plant is burned cleanly to power the fermenting and distilling. The result is a major reduction in carbon emissions and dirt-cheap ethanol for Brazilian drivers. At the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Golden, Colorado, researchers aim to hit similar levels of efficiency by extracting sugars from the entire plant, which includes the so-called cellulosic biomass. Corn farmers will be happy to know that one of the more promising crops is corn stover.
It's the stalks, the husks, the corn cobs, the leaves, every part of the corn plant aside from the grain that's not harvested when you harvest the grain. So oftentimes it's left laying out in the field. There's not a lot of current uses for it.
The hard part is converting the tough cellulose fibers into sugars using bioengineered enzymes. But the payoff could be tremendous.
With biomass, we're talking ratios on the order of 10 to 1. So for every unit of fossil energy or petroleum that you put into the process, you get 10 units of fuel energy out the back end.
The tall prairie grass, known as switchgrass, may prove an even more powerful biofuel crop.
Not only can you get more tonnage of biomass out of an acre of land with this type of material than you can, say, with corn stover, but there are a lot of other benefits as well. It doesn't take nearly the amount of water or fertilizer to make it grow. It's very fast growing. You can harvest it once, maybe even twice in a year, and has a wide geographic range across which it can grow. You know, North Dakota all the way down to Texas, to the southeast.
Biofuels aren't the only way for renewable energy to clean up the automobile. There's also the power grid. This is a plug-in hybrid. Like other hybrids, it runs on a gasoline engine and an electric motor, powered in part by the momentum of braking. But Felix Kramer and the California Cars Initiative have taken these already fuel-efficient cars, in this case a Toyota Prius, a step further. They've beefed up the battery pack and converted it to run on electricity taken straight from any 120-volt outlet.
Plugging this car in is really easy. I timed it once. It's about 9 seconds. All you really do is you take that, plug it into here, 120 volts in your garage, nothing special, and you're done.
The gasoline is used only as a range extension fuel. Under 35 miles per hour, not a drop is used. Above that speed, the gas and electric motors combine for an average of 100 miles per gallon.
And the range of this car is unlimited because it's also a gasoline car. This is a car that you get to plug in, and you can plug it in whenever it's convenient. You're not worried, oh, am I going to run out of power?
Cars that get 100 miles per gallon and more will be necessary if the world's farmlands are to grow fuel as well as food. With current MPG standards, there's simply not enough acreage to supplant the world's oil habit without endangering its food supplies. In 2006, the brilliantly simple plug-in prototypes greatly impressed senators and representatives from both sides of the aisle.
And Congresswoman introduced me, and I stood up and I said, I'm here, and actually I brought my infrastructure with me. And that got a big laugh, because this is the only infrastructure that a car needs.
Of course, electricity today is generated largely by fossil fuels. But plug-in proponents envision an increasingly green power grid to charge the car's battery, and cellulosic biofuels to fill the tank.
There are some corporations that are talking about installing solar carports where they have photovoltaic cells on the roofs of their parking garages, and people with plug-in hybrids or pure electric vehicles can plug in during the day.
While biofuels and plug-in hybrids surge ahead, a new wave of renewable technology is coming in with the tide. The estimated ethanol yield for switchgrass is 1,150 gallons per acre. Currently, Sugarcane yields about 662 gallons per acre and corn grain 354 gallons. Renewable energy will return on Modern Marvels. We now return to renewable energy on Modern Marvels. Despite the fact that the oceans cover 70% of the planet's surface, we've only begun to tap them directly as an energy source. But these marine powerhouses may one day unlock the door to clean, limitless energy. Hydroelectric power was the great renewable energy source of the 20th century, and it will continue to provide gigawatts of power. But with most of the world's rivers already dammed, the future of hydropower will come from the sea. Of the various technologies to capture the ocean's energy, a tidal barrage is the closest in design to traditional hydropower. The barrage is essentially a dam, collecting water from high tide until there's sufficient potential energy for power generation, then forcing the water through turbines when released during low tide. The world's largest and oldest tidal barrage at Lorence, France, began producing power in 1966. Today, it still powers 240,000 homes. A more recent technology known as tidal stream power uses propeller-like turbines to capture the kinetic energy of underwater currents.
And that's one that we could do in all manner of places, because the tidal flow, of course, takes place everywhere on Earth. And harvesting those could be done quite well, and doesn't even have to be at the surface. The issue, though, is that the marine environment's pretty tough to deal with. There's corrosion, parts being banged back and forth. Often the cost of managing those in terms of repairs can be quite large. But we're seeing new work on that.
Much of the work is taking place in the British Isles, where companies such as Marine Current Turbines are thinking big, sinking massive pilings into the ocean floor and letting the turbines do their work.
And the amount of energy you get out of a turbine is proportional directly to the density of the fluid that flows back and forth. And so a water turbine has several hundred times the power of an air turbine.
Wave power is an even newer technology. Yet it may hold the most promise of all, since wave power can be captured anywhere on the ocean. In this design, a 450-foot chain of pipes, connected by hinged joints, sits semi-submerged on the ocean. Each motion of the waves is resisted by hydraulic rams located in the hinges. This action pumps high-pressure oil through hydraulic motors, which drive electrical generators. Electrical transmission lines also keep the floating power plant tethered to the ocean floor. A Scottish company, Ocean Power Delivery, has installed a successful 2.5 megawatt wave farm off the coast of Portugal. A wave farm occupying less than half a square mile of ocean would generate 30 megawatts of power, or enough for 20,000 British homes. 472 square miles of ocean could power each of the United Kingdom's 24.5 million households. Each region of the Earth has its own renewable sources, from the vast wind potential of North Dakota to the solar motherlode that waits in the Sahara. When you put them all together, one thing becomes clear. Renewable energy offers a global solution to global problems.
We honestly have the potential now to think about flipping things from being a fossil fuel-driven economy with little bits of renewables to being a renewable energy-driven economy with fossil fuels filling in the background. And that's a world that really no one thought possible only a decade or two ago.
The technology works, but a renewable future also requires political will and a new way of thinking, in which a farm harvests wind, a harvest yields fuel, and a rooftop becomes a power plant.